Dean Curry here, Fantasy Football RSVP. So let's get right to it with. I want to discuss the waiver wire. A lot of people don't really know exactly how to play the waiver wire in fantasy football. And I know it might seem like a simple thing you do, you put up your list, but there's certain tricks to playing a waiver wire to get the players that you want. I routinely advise people on how to play the waiver wire. Let's say, let me give you an example. Let's say you're in a 12-man league and your waiver wire slot is 10 or 11. It's always good, if you could kind of move your way down the waiver wire, maybe, if your team's doing well, that is a good time. Let's say you're 3-0 or 4-1. That's usually a good time to skip the waiver wire that week, just to kind of move up a few slots. Some people, are fortunate. They draft well and their players are performing well. In every league I consult in, sometimes it's just three or four people that never really play the waiver wire. It's their style of play. I'm not knocking it. Maybe they're just in love with the players. I don't know. But it's just something to consider. As far as the waiver wire, if you're doing well, you want to move down the slots. If you're not doing well, you want to try to take advantage of the waiver wire and get the players you need. And whether you're 9 or 10 or 6, you can't worry too much about moving down on the waiver wire if you're 1-3 or 1-4, because there might be players you really need. And if you play in a 12-man league, every week there's at least 3 or 4 people that don't even participate in the waiver wire. So that's something you have to consider, especially if their team's doing well. So even though you might be at 12, you really might be more at like 7 or 8. As far as waiver wire, and then there's other leagues where people are not active at all on the waiver wire. They really like their players. Sometimes early in the season, people go light on the waiver wire. So if there's players you need, I wouldn't even worry about what slot you're at. I mean, if you could move down the waiver wire, if you're doing well, fine. If you're not doing well, you may just have to pick up the players you need, now in the beginning of the season before the waiver wire starts to get really strong, which happens around the halfway point of the season. But if you're 2-2 or 3-3, you could afford to take off the waiver wire that week and wait for them to become green in free agency. You could certainly do that and try to move down the slot a little. But if you're behind, try to get the players you need, especially in the beginning. It doesn't matter if you're 9 or 10 or 12, because unless you're 1, 2, or 3, if someone great, comes out, you're probably not going to get that person anyway. Adversely, if you could kind of hold off and move down the waiver wire, there's going to be 1 or 2 instances where you could really pick up a great player. But again, that's a little hard to do when you're kind of behind. And when you're behind, the teams that are behind usually play the waiver wire, and the teams that are ahead usually don't. So even though you might be 10 or 12, you might actually be a lot less than that each week, especially in the first half of the season. As far as the waiver wire, what you really want to do is you really want to list all the players that you're going to pick up. Let's say you're going to pick up 4 players on the waiver wire. That's a lot, but let's say you're going to pick up 4 players. You're going to drop these 3, or let's make it 3 players. You're going to pick up 3 players. Well, let's say that Michael Gallup, I don't know, or Cortland Sutton, they're doing really, really well, and they're both available on your waiver wire in week 6. And you're at like waiver wire 10 or 11, you're probably not going to get either of them, because the first 10 people are probably, going to pick them up. So what you want to do is, in case they don't, maybe put Gallup at your third pick, because it goes in order, you see, and you're probably not going to get them anyway. So just put them on number 3, because just in case no one picks them up, which would probably be like slim to none, you still have them, but you didn't waste that spot. And this is the trick. Let's say there's another player that you want, maybe D.D. Westbrook. No one's going to pick up D.D. Westbrook with their first pick, you know. Or let's say you want Vernon Davis this week in week 6, coming off concussion protocol, going against Miami Dolphins. And no one's going to pick up Vernon Davis with their first pick. Or let's say you want to stick with that route and you think David Johnson in week 6, because he's going through a back situation, and you really want Chase Edmonds as the backup. Well, nobody's going to pick Chase Edmonds with the first pick. So even though you're at waiver wire 10 or 11, if you put Chase Edmonds in that first slot on the waiver wire, you're probably going to get first crack at him. Or if you put, Chase Edmonds or Vernon Davis, you're probably going to get Vernon Davis. But if you put those two at the third spot, now you're contending with all the other people that might also have 3 or 4 waiver wire selections coming up, and your number may not be at the number 1 slot. But if you're like, let's say you're 11th out of 12th on waiver wire, and you put Vernon Davis or Chase, as the very first pick on your waiver wire, chances are you're probably going to pick first, because people are going to go for Cortland Sutton, Gallup, and all like the major, defenses that they're streaming that week, so on and so forth. Okay, so it's very important that you start thinking, all right, I have no shot at this guy, so I'm just going to put him last just in case no one picks him up. But I'm not going to put him first, because if you put him first and then that's taken, then the second round, okay, that team, gets booted to the last if it's moved from last. Some waiver wires are set up that when you pick, you move to the end of the line. So they move to the end of the line, but then someone else, on waiver wire in the second round would still, have perhaps a better slot than you. So this is sort of, how you have to kind of think about your waiver wire order, okay? Because when someone picks, they go to the end of the line. But let's say there was the number 1 and 2 waiver wire. We're both going for Gallup. Well, the number 1 slot will get that, and then that will be kicked out. And then let's say that guy who was number 2, he's still number 2 in the next round, because his first waiver order didn't get filled. And now you're contending with that. You know what I'm saying? So you're still, you're not ahead of that guy. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to sort of think this way. And, I'm really good at organizing, on our one-on-one, VIP club, the Knights and Dames Fantasy Football VIP club. It's $7.77. I'll actually go over, your waiver wire, your trade, look at other teams, help you orchestrate trades. $7.77 a month. It's nothing, and you have someone advising you, discussing, in chat rooms. You get chat rooms, you get a whole bunch of stuff, secret videos, things of that nature, and we'll go over your waiver wire, and the order in which you put your waiver wire is very important, because you skip so many people, that even if you're like at waiver wire 10 out of 12, you're like 10th on the list. There's ways to maneuver that to at least get like 2 of the 3 players that you want, just by the order that you put them in. So you could always take a chance and put Gallup first, But with 10 people ahead of you, chances are you're not going to get him, and you just basically wasted a slot. You could have tried to get Chase Edmonds, or you could have got Vernon Davis this week going against Miami, coming off concussion protocol, new coach that likes ball control offense, and or like Chris Thompson might be available on your waiver wire as well. You put that first, people are going to go after Cortland Sutton if he's available, or Gallup, or any other person that is really strong. And if you pick like people that are a little further down, like on your list, and put them first, chances are you're going to get that person. And that's how you skip the line on waiver wire. Another important aspect of waiver wire is most people don't plan ahead. Let's say they stream defenses. Most people don't plan ahead until the waiver wire. When you stream a defense, just to explain it nice and easy, it basically means that every week you're picking a new defense probably that matches up against a very soft or weak offense. And what people generally do is they wait for the waiver wire to pick up and stream for that week because they don't want to waste a bench spot by thinking too far ahead and having 2 or 3 defenses. But that's sort of a mistake. One thing I told people to pick up was the Eagles defense against the Jets. Their quarterback has mono. They have all sorts of injuries on that team. It's just a complete mess. And I was telling people 2 weeks prior to pick up the Eagles defense, and they put up almost 40 points. But if you waited until the waiver wire and you put you're in waiver wire 9 or 10, chances are the 9 people before you are going to pick up the Eagles defense on the week. But if you leave 2 spots on your team for defenses, almost never do people think 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before, because they don't want to waste a roster spot, and they don't have room, or they'd have to drop someone. But that could be very advantageous in waiver wire streaming for defenses, because people just don't think that way. They just don't think 2 weeks in advance. A nice waiver wire selection is the Ravens this week against Cincinnati, who is kind of like a mess right now. And I was telling people, or the Redskins against Miami, I was telling people to pick that up 2 weeks ago. But if you wait to waiver wire, then I know you don't want to waste a spot, but that's one tricky way to get the defense that you want. So these are sort of little tricks that you could do on the waiver wire. And like I said, you want to just list your players that you want, 3 people, and then start thinking about how you want to list them and who you actually have a chance of getting, and who you actually if you have Gallup and you're the 6th pick and you want to put Gallup in, maybe that might be worth a chance of putting it in the first spot, because you only have 5 people ahead of you, 2 or 3 of which are probably not going to play the waiver wire that week. So you're really only contending against maybe 2 or 3 people, and maybe they go for Cortland Sutton or a quarterback or something like that. But these are the things you have to kind of worry about. Everyone, just a side note, everyone has, Pat, who has Pat Mahomes, are thinking they got it made. And they got a little banged up last game. They slowed down, the Colts slowed down the defense on them. And, that's what a formula now people are going to use. They're going to try to run the ball. And even if they lose, they're going to try to run the ball, because they're just going to try to keep Mahomes off the field. And when you keep him off the field, he can't run up his fantasy points. And they're actually going against, they have a brutal schedule for the playoffs. They have to play in, at the Patriots. Then they play Denver, which has a good defensive line. And they have to play the Bears, I mean, and all three of them have a very good running game, or running game versatility, that they could just run on this team. They also play towards the end of the season. They play they play Denver twice. They play the Chargers twice. They play Minnesota. You know, these are all like over the last 7 games. All these teams run the ball very well, and they have a good defensive line. And I'm not saying you drop or don't play, Mahomes, but you might want to waiver wire a softer, even stream a quarterback certain weeks. It's hard to sit, you know, uh, Pat Mahomes, but you might want to consider that because he got banged up last game. He's going to get banged up against these teams at the end of the season because they all rushed the passer really, really well, and he's going to get hit. You know, so it's just something to consider. But the waiver wire, again, if you really want to move down slots, if you're doing well or you're 500 and in the race, you could take a week off or two. You might want to consider doing that just to move down on the slots. But if you're very clever about the order that you put in your waiver wire, chances are, out of like 3 people or 4 people, let's say, you could probably get at least 2 or 3 of those people just by putting the people first that you think aren't going to be taken first. And then the people you think are going to be taken, kind of moving them back a little, unless you're very, high on the waiver wire. Then you could go for Sutton or Gallup, or, you don't have to worry too much about streaming a defense 2 weeks in advance if you're, right there at the top. So I'm Dean Curry. This is sort of an open video for everyone. I will post it on the VIP room as well. But I just wanted to kind of explain, the waiver wire and kind of the secret formula for really getting the players you want. I want to wish you all the very best. Have a wonderful day. And so have a great fantasy week.